Hey everyone, Gill Gross here post-match. Stefanos Tsitsipas versus Jan-Lennard Struff, 2023 Madrid quarterfinals. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. The unbelievable run of Struff continues and he reaches his first ever Masters 1000 semifinal. He is just the third lucky loser to ever reach the semifinal stage of a 1000. And interestingly enough, he lost to Aslan Karatsev in qualifying. He will get a chance to avenge that loss in the semis of the main draw. Absolutely insane story. And, you know, I see qualifiers rematch lucky losers all the time. It always happens a couple of times on tour every year. But has it ever happened in this big a match? I would venture to say probably not. Now, OptaAce did put out a stat before I, of course, get into the match analysis. Let's delve into some history here. It's the third time in a 1000, two players who were part of the qualifiers will play in the semis. In Paris, Masters 2003, it happened. Radek Stepanek and Max Mirny both made the semis. And then in Hamburg 2004, Richard Gasquet played, or I don't know if they played, and Christoph Rokas both made the semis. So again, I don't know if those two, if those players played each other, and I don't know if any of them were lucky losers. But however you spin it historically, this is one of the wildest things that you will ever see. So, Struff over Tsitsipas, 3 sets. Looking at this result at face value from Tsitsipas's perspective, it seems like a really bad loss. The draw opened up. All you had to do was beat Struff and Karatsev, two guys whose ranking isn't even good to get a direct entry into this draw. That's all he would have needed to do, and then he would have been in a Masters 1000 final. You lose to Struff, it looks like a bad loss. But I think if you watched this match carefully, your takeaway may have been just a little bit different than that. That Struff played so incredibly well and is such a tough matchup for Stefanos Tsitsipas that Tsitsipas played all right and still came out on the losing end of this. I don't think Tsitsipas played badly in any of the 3 sets. And I thought he played spectacularly well in the second set. In the areas where he is usually good, Tsitsipas was good in this match. And Struff, you got to give it up because I thought he was just absolutely outstanding. And it's good to see a guy who has spent plenty of time inside the top 50, a little bit of time inside the top 30, was around 50 in the world when he had a foot injury last year and it really derailed him. And it's been kind of a long road back. And now, of course, he is officially back and his ranking is certainly recovered. I think he's going to be around 30 in the world, regardless of the result against Karatsev when this is all said and done. The matchup history you should also take into account. At tour level, the head-to-head between these two is now 3-3. We're even. Struff beat Tsitsipas twice in 2019. You might say, well, you know, Stefanos was young, but he was a top 10 player at this point. Both times Struff beat him, Tsitsipas was a top 10 player. So he was very, very good. He was the much higher ranked player than Struff. And Jan-Lennard has still defeated him twice. And then Tsitsipas had won the last 2, but both were in 3 sets. So this is a bad matchup for Tsitsipas. We'll get into a little bit of why. First set, Tsitsipas had a set point. Struff saved it with an unreturned serve. And it goes to a tiebreak. The difference in the tiebreak was Tsitsipas hitting 2 missed spot first serves. You could call them poor first serves, but they weren't egregiously bad because they were still fast. They just weren't in a good location. Both serves were on the ad side. One was wide, and it was a backhand return by Struff. The other was tee, and it was a forehand return by Struff. But the result was the same. The result was that Struff obliterated first serve returns to win the point outright off the return of serve, off the first return. And that was the difference in the tiebreak. In the second set, really dominant stuff by both on serve. Very, very, very dominant serving set until 5-all. Struff played a sloppy game at 5-all. He hit 2 double faults. He butchered a volley off of a serve and volley. And Tsitsipas made 1 good return, and that's all he needed to break serve in the second set. I was very impressed with Tsitsipas' second set, though, as I mentioned. In the third set, Tsitsipas at 1-2, for the first time in a long, long time, maybe even the first time all match, missed a string of first serves. It was the first service game that I really noticed that Tsitsipas missed a ton of first serves. And that once again allowed Struff to do damage off of the return of serve. Struff at deuce played probably his best baseline rally of the match. He is not someone who hits a lot of really good ground strokes on the run from behind the baseline. But in this particular rally, he was able to do that, and he finished with a gorgeous backhand down the line winner. On break point, it was kind of similar to what we saw in the first set tiebreak, where Tsitsipas hit a first serve that wasn't all that great, and Struff punished it with a backhand return cross court, followed by a backhand down the line for a virtual winner, but really a forced error. And Struff was able to hold on for the rest of the way in the third set. So 1 break the difference in both the second and the third, and a tie break the difference in the first set. Really, really tight margins in this one. And that's why I kind of wanted to zoom in on those moments. Let's talk about why Tsitsipas couldn't break serve on a regular basis. Why was it the only time he broke serve? It was a horrendous game by Struff. Struff saved 9 out of 10 break points. So you have to start there. Tsitsipas did create a fair amount of opportunity in server-friendly conditions against a guy in Struff who serves huge, and just, when he's on, he's very, very tough to break in general. So, the opportunities were there. I think the vast majority of those break points were saved impressively by Struff. And I do not recall a single one where there was a glaring mistake made by Tsitsipas, where he was in position to hit an offensive forehand and missed it up break point, or he had an easy volley or an overhead, or made an unforced error, neutral backhand in a neutral rally. I don't recall any of those instances. What I do recall is a lot of great serving by Struff and poor returning by Tsitsipas. He was not giving himself much of a chance to really get into these break points, these break point opportunities. And the ad side returning was of particular difficulty for Tsitsipas. Struff won 18 out of 23 points when he went out wide with first serves on the ad side, and 62% of his serves did go out wide on the ad side. Also on the ad side, going out wide, Struff won 6 of 8 second serve points. And that is where you really circle it, where there's a problem here. And so often, I don't know how many of the break points were on the ad side, but certainly the majority. And when they were, and Struff had to hit a second serve, he could go to the Tsitsipas backhand, and Stefanos had an issue with this. He had a dilemma, the same dilemma that he faced against Alcaraz in Barcelona. Struff can do the same thing. If Tsitsipas stands in, he struggles to hit the backhand return clean when he has to hit it early on the rise. He misses it. He doesn't hit the strings on it. He's rushed on it. It's not a good return. The solution is to stand deep. The solution is to move back. It is a solution against everybody who can't serve and volley. It is a solution against everybody except serve and volleyers. And then it's not a solution anymore. So that's the dilemma against Alcaraz, against Struff. As soon as Tsitsipas moves back, there goes the serve and volley. And now Tsitsipas has a return that he can hit cleanly, he can hit well, but he's not going to hit a backhand passing shot off of the back fence on a regular basis effectively. On the Tsitsipas return in general, I felt his grips and his positioning constantly changing all match long. Sometimes he would drive, sometimes he would block, sometimes he would stand in, sometimes he would move back. It was changing the entire match. Almost, it seemed almost random. It was almost like pick a name out of a hat or pick a strategy out of a hat and go with that. And I question this. Is this the best way to maximize performance? It's one thing if you're looking for solutions. If you're trying to figure out what's best, it's another thing if something's not working, a particular strategy isn't working, and then you just try to change it up and go to something else. And every time that happens, I always praise a player who does that. You should be changing things. You should be looking for solutions via mixing up strategies and changing strategies. But is it the best way to just constantly be doing different stuff all the time? Is that the best way to maximize performance? Meaning, well, strategy is great, but what about execution? And can your execution be on the level that it needs to be if you are constantly changing your return strategy? It muddies the mind. You're going to lose. You don't have any, good feel or repetition on any particular return because you're constantly hitting a different return. Your block return from in tight on the baseline is different from your drive return up on the baseline, which is different from your block return 5 feet behind the baseline, which is different from your drive return 9 feet behind the baseline. And if you are constantly doing all of these different things, not just on the backhand, but on the forehand too, sometimes he'd drive it, sometimes he'd chip it. If you're doing all of these different things, how are you going to execute at a high level your return? I feel like you can't. And look, Tsitsipas was not... There were times, especially in the first set, where I thought the block return was pretty good, almost good enough to get him over the line with the break of serve. And there were times in the third set, there were moments where, the drive return from a deep position worked a couple times. It was pretty good. But there was nothing that was working consistently enough, and he couldn't really stick with anything at any point in time. I'll give you some examples. Look, set one, he had a set point. He had a set point in the first. He stood in and swung through, and he mishit it, and he didn't make the return in the court. The entire set, it seemed like, for the vast majority of the set, he was blocking from that position on the backhand, and sometimes the forehand. But it seemed like the whole set he was blocking. So why are you driving when you have set point? How are you going to execute that return if you've barely tried to hit that return the entire match? Another really good case study is the final game of the match, where you had 3 sets of tennis pretty much to try to figure out what the best strategy is. And it was very clear that Tsitsipas still didn't really know what the best strategy was because he stood in on one backhand return and again mishit it and didn't make the return off of a second serve return up 15-30. It was one of his most egregious mistakes of the match. And then for the rest of the game, he stood back and let Struff serve and volley on him. And he had actually a spectacular match point save on the first occasion. But then on match point, Struff, second serve and volley, Tsitsipas missed the backhand return. So that's my main kind of critique for Tsitsipas's performance is, figure out what the best strategy is and stick with it for a long period of time. I think that's the best move. Not constantly return in a different style with a different strategy the whole match. But you got to give Struff so much credit for keeping Tsitsipas honest. The wide serve on the deuce side for Struff was an absolute monster. Tsitsipas trying to protect that backhand return and leaning that way. Well, Struff responded. He hit 8 aces with the wide serve on the deuce side alone. Spectacular. He only hit 2 aces T, but he hit 8 aces wide because Tsitsipas was shaded over to protect that backhand. That was tremendous by Struff. And even when he went to the backhand, he didn't always go to the backhand with pace. Sometimes he went kick, and that bothered Tsitsipas with the height. Very, very effective. And then sometimes he could bother him with the pace, and Tsitsipas would catch it late. Struff, terrific variety on the first serve. And ultimately, that's what this result was about. Jan-Lennard Struff is a spectacular server. He brings the heat, he brings the variety, he brings the pressure coming forward with great volleys. He takes it to you, and he challenges your return of serve. And this is Madrid. We have altitude. We have conditions, architecture of the stadium that keeps all the wind out. Great server conditions. The Tsitsipas return of serve. Is it there? Usually on a clay court, it's good enough to get into the points, and he can break serve on a clay court. Not this clay court, not against this opponent. Struff serve, Tsitsipas return of serve, too much of a mismatch on this occasion in Madrid in these conditions. Struff also answered the bell. He was unbelievably clutch when it came to his opportunities. Compare the approach. I just criticized Tsitsipas mildly for changing it up too much and not having a clear vision of what the best strategy is. Well, how about Struff? What I love about Struff, on the return games especially, he knows he's not a great mover, so he knows exactly what he needs to do. He needs to be aggressive and crush returns of serve. And he has the ability to do it, whether it be on his forehand or his backhand. So there's no hiding. The only way is to hit a good serve. If you don't hit a good serve, he punishes you. And the reason he punishes you consistently is because he knows exactly who he is and exactly how he needs to play. And in the first set, that came through for him. In the third set, that came through for him. And he comes away with a top 5 victory, well earned. Can't wait to see what happens in that semifinal against Karatsev. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.